Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we can all agree that regardless of your feelings about it, the election carried on for what felt like an extremely long time, and you can really tell at the end of it there's a lot of hostilities, even to this day. Now, my belief is that the reason for this is partisanship. And my claim is that partisanship is damaging our very democracy. Now, the reason why I believe so is because partisanship has slipped into both the communities, the news, and just the way our government functions. Now, on the first topic of how it has affected the citizens, I believe that liberals versus conservative, that whole paradigm of like, oh, it's us versus them, the right versus the left, that's negatively affected us. And I'm citing from Pew, who's a kind of a leading poll gathering site, and they've been doing this since 1972, so I'd say they're pretty reliable. And what they found is that 55% of Democrats and 49% of Republicans are afraid of the other party. Fear. That's not exactly a great thing. On top of that, 70% of Democrats and 52% of Republicans view the other side as closed-minded, that they're not really engaged and they're not really politically aware. And then on top of that, about 30% from both parties believe that they couldn't really get along with somebody if a new neighbor moved in and that person was openly from the other side of the aisle, that they wouldn't be able to get along with them. Now, why is this an issue? This is an issue because our democracy functions on the very fact that we get to communicate and exchange ideas. And when you have 45 and 50% of the other side saying like, I don't want to associate with you, I don't even want to hear you out, simply because of your political ideals, that's problematic. That doesn't get us anywhere, that doesn't allow us to grow and continue as a country if we're all one-sided. Now, the news is extremely to blame for this. This reflects in everything from how biased certain news organizations have become, even if they don't want to admit it, they are. Everything from Fox News and Breitbart for the right, or the Washington Times, or sorry, the New York Times, excuse me, and CNN. You could both say like, oh, they're very partisan in that they don't cover the election fairly depending on whose candidate that is. And that's seeped into everything. That's seeped into everything for how we've developed the two most disliked candidates in our history. I believe it was Clinton who's at 59% unapproval ratings, and Donald Trump, our president tomorrow, at 60% unapproval ratings. Now, that's a big issue because if we have this two-party system, you would think that they provide us the options that we'd like. But only 35% of Americans actually agreed with or actually supported the two options that we were given. Now, why is that even more so damaging to our democracy? Well, because, 46.3% of our country didn't vote. They didn't participate in the democratic process, the very fabric of our democracy, this past election. So when nearly half the country doesn't vote, and 35% of our country only believes that the candidates we were given were good options, you can see the correlation there. You can see why the partisanship has slipped into it. Because I don't like the Democratic nominee, and I don't like the Republican nominee, so I'm just not gonna vote. And that's how we're left with nearly half the country not participating in our democracy. Now, on top of that, it's seeped into our government and that it's not working very efficiently. Now, what I mean by this is that both sides don't want to cooperate with each other. They don't want to talk. Just how you and your neighbor may not want to talk because you're from the Democratic and Republican Party, even within themselves, they don't want to talk in our government. You guys, I don't know if you remember, but in 2013, our federal government had a gridlock. It shut down. It just straight up did not do anything for a span of a few days. Why? Because we were all arguing, they were arguing over whether or not to pass the Obamacare and like the funding that went into that. Now, when our leaders, the people that we elect to represent us, when they can't even get along to the point where they straight up just shut down and they're not doing anything, that is an issue. And that issue stems directly from partisanship. When Obama says, it's not a negotiation. We're like, I'm gonna pass Obamacare, we're not negotiating on that. But then when a Republican senator from the House says, if you don't go our way, we're gonna strong arm you. Even to the point where our Supreme Court justice, that seat, a vital seat in our judicial system, is not even filled to this day. Republicans blocked Democrats from putting in Obama's nominee for that, going on for about 170 days. And in response to that, Democrats have done the same thing to Republicans now that Donald Trump has been elected. And they're not allowing him until they meet their standards for it. Well, that's an issue I find. Because it shouldn't be up to your standards based on your biased political views. It should be up to standards who can do the job the best. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I believe firmly that partisanship within our government, within our news, and within our own community over the last 8 or so years has negatively affected our democracy in a terrible way, and it needs to change. Thank you very much.
Oh, I thought you were hitting something.
No, I need to run to the.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Don't run, you'll trip, you'll fall, it'll be a mess. All right, Nick, some things that were pretty solid. I thought your proposition was very clearly stated. I think you do a very good job speaking to the audience. You seem to know what your argument is, and you present it effectively. I think you build some good ethos by looking at us and speaking forcefully and with good energy and variety in your voice. So the delivery of the speech, I think, is also really strong. The contents of the speech, I think, need to be more thoroughly previewed. I do think there's a structure here, but because the preview is ambiguous, it's harder to pick out some of those supporting points. I do get a point that talks about the news media. I do get a point that talks about government efficiency. I think your first point was basically about the attitudes of citizens towards their government. And I think if you've got clearer declarative statements, it'll be easier for your argument to build and for people to follow. So although there is a structure, it needs to be, I think, a little bit sharper and a little bit more, to put it bluntly, in the face of the audience so they can follow those points easier. I thought the first point was documented pretty well with the data that you had on attitudes of party members toward the other party. I thought that was pretty good. I do think that you need a few more examples of unwillingness to cooperate with each other. You make a reference to the government shutdown as your main illustration on that point. And since you don't have a source citation on it, you don't have any expert testimony that analyzes what the reasons for that shutdown were, I think you've made a big assumption there. Not necessarily a bad assumption, but I think you need something to show that it is really connected to the partisanship that you were talking about. And since that's only one example, I think you need some more information, maybe some other illustrations to show where there's been a lack of progress. I saw, where are you? I know you're there somewhere. I saw one of the statistics that I just ran across last week was the Obama administration, President Obama signed the fewest number of laws of any president in the last 50 years or something like that. And there's a good example. The legislature is not doing the things that they typically are doing, and the president's not responding. And then you could attribute it to the partisanship because maybe they signed more laws when the Democrats were in control and Obama was president, and then the partisanship came in when the other party says, no, you got to stop doing all the things that you're doing, that kind of thing. I think the one thing that maybe needs a little bit development too is the notion that defining what partisanship is, because I'm sure that a lot of people who have their beliefs think, I'm standing up not for my party, but so much for what I believe in, and what you want to do is a bad idea, or what I want to do is the right idea. And the notion that people don't negotiate about that, I think there's a good point to be made there, but I think you need to show that it's related to people's desire to be in control or have power or not listen to the other side a little bit more, as opposed to it being related to the fact that they are simply doing what they think is the right thing to do. And so I think you need a little bit more of that, that citizens or voters feel a particular way about the parties. I think you did a good job illustrating that. What I need to see is some stuff that says, especially on that third point, government efficiency, that's the reason that we're not getting the productivity that we need to have. They're all waiting out the next group of people. You did have a good example with the Supreme Court nomination. I did think that one applied. So that is actually a second example, like the government shutdown. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And did you have an outline you want to give me now, or?
No.
Oh, okay. Did he pass off his time to somebody else? No, he didn't. Andres, we're going to have you next. Or Andreas. How do you say it?
Andreas.
Andreas, okay. Andreas, I got you. You know what? He's going to sneak in while you're talking. I hope that's not too disruptive. Hopefully he'll wait. I'll do the best I can to give you some signals. I'll give you finger signals.
Okay.
count down 4, 3, 2, that sort of thing. Okay.